Remembering. There is a game called I Remember, which has been the cause of greater suffering than almost anything else. It illustrates how difficult it is to remember even a simple thing for any length of time. Two people make a pact to practice I remember. Thenceforward, every time one of them hands anything to the other, the recipient must say, I remember, when he accepts the object. The first person to forget to say this phrase under these circumstances loses the game and pays a forfeit. Nasrudin had an I remember duel with his wife. The honours were even, and they almost lost their reason passing objects back and forth until neither could stand the pace much longer. The mullah devised a plan. He went on a pilgrimage to Mecca. When he came back several months later, armed with a gift to hand his wife, finally to win the game in the excitement of the reunion, she met him at the gate. In her arms was a bundle. I am not going to take it, said the mullah to himself. But as soon as he was within a few paces of her, she said, Here is your new son. The mullah, overcome with joy, took the child into his arms and forgot to say, I remember. Refutation of the Philosophers. A number of philosophers had banded themselves together and were travelling from one country to another, engaging local sages in learned disputation. When they arrived in Nasrudin's town, the local governor sent for the mullah to confront them, for all the intellectuals whom he had produced were regularly routed by these strangers. Mulla Nasrudin presented himself. You had better first speak to those who have faced the philosophers, the governor told him, so that you can get some idea of their methods. Not at all, said the mullah. The less I know about their methods of thought, the better, for I do not think like them, nor will I become imprisoned by their artificialities. The contest was staged in a large hall, before an enormous gathering from far and near. The first philosopher stepped forward to start the disputation. What, he asked the mullah, is the centre of the earth? The mullah pointed with his pen. The exact centre of the earth is the centre of the spot upon which my donkey yonder has his foot. How can you prove it? On the contrary, you disprove it. Get a measuring tape. The second philosopher asked, How many stars are there in the sky? Nasrudin immediately replied, Exactly the same number as there are hairs in the coat of my donkey. Anyone who disbelieves this is at liberty to count both. The third philosopher said, How many avenues of human perception are there? Not at all difficult, said Nasrudin. There are exactly as many as there are hairs in your beard, and I will demonstrate them if you like, one by one, as I pluck those hairs for you. They are also, he continued, equal to the number of hairs in the tail of my donkey. The philosophers consulted together, realized that their theoretical speculations were incapable of logical or quantitative proof. With one accord, they enrolled themselves as disciples of Nasrudin. Ask me another. According to the general opinion of the uninitiated, mused Nasrudin as he walked along the road, dervishes are mad. According to the sages, however, they are the true masters of the world. I would like to test one and myself to make sure. Then he saw a tall figure, robed like an Akuldan dervish, reputed to be exceptionally enlightened men, coming towards him.
"Friend," said the mullah, "I want to perform an experiment to test your powers of psychic penetration and also my sanity."
"Proceed," said the Akeldin. Nasrudin made a sudden sweeping motion with his arm, then clenched his fist.
"What have I in my hand?"
"A horse, chariot, and driver," said the Akeldin immediately.
"That's no real test." Nasrudin was petulant. "Because you saw me pick them up."
The reward. Nasrudin had some good news for the king, and after a great deal of difficulty managed to gain an audience, although by tradition every subject theoretically had the right of immediate access to the court. The king was pleased with what he had been told. "Choose your own reward," he said.
50 lashes,
said Nasrudin. Puzzled, the king ordered that Nasrudin be beaten. When 25 strokes had been administered, Nasrudin called,
"Stop!" "Now," he said, "bring in my partner and give him the other half of the reward. The Chamberlain, your Majesty, would not allow me to see you unless I would swear to give him exactly half of anything that I got as a result of my good news."
The high cost of learning. Nasrudin decided that he could benefit by learning something new. He went to see a master musician.
"How much do you charge to teach lute playing?"
3 silver pieces for the first month. After that, 1 silver piece a month."
"Excellent," said Nasrudin. "I shall begin with the second month."
The spiritual teacher. A wizened sage, from beyond Asashak, a far-off eastern land, had arrived in the village. His philosophical expositions were so abstruse and yet so tantalizing that the usual company in the tea-house soon became convinced that he could perhaps unveil for them the mysteries of life. Nasrudin listened to him for a while.
"You know," he said, "I have had experiences something like yours on your travels. I, too, have been a wandering teacher."
"Tell me something about it, if you must," said the elder, somewhat ruffled at the interruption.
"Oh, yes, I must,"
said the mullah. He continued.
"For instance, there was the trip which I took through Kurdistan. I was welcomed everywhere I went. I stayed at one monastery after another, where the dervishes listened eagerly to me. I was given free lodging at caravanserais, free food at tea-houses. Everywhere the people were impressed by me."
The ancient monk was becoming impatient at all this personal publicity. "Did nobody ever oppose anything you said at any time?" he asked querulously.
"Oh, yes," said Nasrudin. "Once I was beaten up and put in the stocks, then driven out of a town."
"Why was that?"
"Well, you see, the people there happened to understand Turkish, the language I was doing my teaching in."
"What about the people who had welcomed you?"
"Oh, they were Kurds. They have a language of their own. I was safe so long as I was with them."
Hot soup, cold hands. A man who had heard that Nasrudin was very wise decided to make a journey to see him. "I can learn something from such a sage as this," he thought, "and there must be method in his madness, if one can only find the constant factor which must run through it. I have, after all, studied long and visited many metaphysical schools. This will enable me to judge and to learn where others have failed." Accordingly, he undertook the long and tiresome journey to Nasrudin's tiny house, perched on a mountain ledge. Looking in through the window, he saw Nasrudin huddled beside a feeble fire, blowing into his cupped hands. As soon as he was admitted, he asked the mullah what he had been doing.
Warming my hands with my breath," Nasrudin told him.
After that, neither party started any conversation, and the seeker wondered whether Nasrudin would vouchsafe any of his wisdom after all. Presently, Nasrudin's wife brought 2 bowls of broth. Nasrudin immediately started blowing upon the surface of the broth. "Ah, I may now learn something," said the seeker to himself. Aloud, he said, "What are you doing, teacher?"
"Blowing on my broth to cool it with my breath," said the mullah.
"The man is undoubtedly a fraud and probably a liar," said the visitor inwardly. "First he blows for hot, and then he blows for cold. How can I believe anything he may say to me?" And he went away. "The time has not been wasted," he told himself, as he made his way back along the mountain road. "For at least I have established that Nasrudin is no teacher." A word for it. Hearing that a man wanted to learn the Kurdish language, Nasrudin offered to teach him. Nasrudin's own knowledge of Kurdish was limited to a few words.
"We shall start with the word for hot soup," said the mullah. "In Kurdish, this is ash."
I don't quite understand, mullah. How would you say cold soup?"
"You never say cold soup. The Kurds like their soup hot."
Science. A scientist and a logician met Nasrudin and wrangled with him as they walked along a road. Nasrudin was hard-pressed. The scientist said, "I cannot accept anything as existing unless I carry out a test or unless I see it with my own eyes." The logician said, "I cannot attempt anything unless I have worked it out in theory beforehand." Suddenly, Nasrudin knelt down and started to pour something into a lake beside the road. "What are you doing?" they asked together.
"You know how yogurt multiplies when you put it into milk? Well, I am adding a little yogurt to this water."
"But you can't make yogurt that way."
I know, but just supposing it takes."
A question is an answer. Why do you always answer a question with another question, mullah?
"Do I?"
Aren't we all? Nasrudin was trotting his donkey in all directions one day. Someone asked him, "Where are you going, Nasrudin?" He said,
"I am looking for my donkey."
The value of truth.
"If you want truth,"
Nasrudin told a group of seekers who had come to hear his teachings,
"you will have to pay for it."
"But why should you have to pay for something like truth?" asked one of the company.
"Have you not noticed," said Nasrudin, "that it is the scarcity of a thing which determines its value?"
Take no chances. A theologian was ill. He had heard that Nasrudin was a mystic, and in his semi-delirium convinced himself that there might be something in all this after all. So he sent for the mullah. "Prescribe a prayer which can ease me into the other world, mullah," he said. For you have a reputation of being in communication with another dimension.
Delighted, said Nasrudin. Here you are. God help me, devil help me.
Forgetting his infirmity, the divine sat bolt upright, scandalized. Mulla, you must be insane.
Not at all, my dear fellow. A man in your position cannot afford to take chances. When he sees two alternatives, he should try to provide for either of them working out.
Guess what? A wag met Nasrudin. In his pocket he had an egg. Tell me, Mulla, are you any good at guessing games?
Not bad,
said Nasrudin. Very well then. Tell me what I have in my pocket.
Give me a clue, then.
It is shaped like an egg. It is yellow and white inside, and it looks like an egg.
Some sort of a cake, said Nasrudin.
The Merchant. A rich merchant spent some days in the village of Nasrudin. Although he was miserly, people were respectful towards him. Nasrudin asked someone,
"Why do you salute him every time he passes? You never get a tip from him."
"You don't understand. He's a merchant. That is something, isn't it? Besides, we feel he might give us something one day." A week after the visitor had left, Nasrudin went to market. He bought a dozen watermelons at one stall, and sold them at the next. He made a loss on the transaction. Then he did the same again with something else. When he had been round most of the stallholders, he went to the tea-house and airily ordered an expensive pink tea with whipped cream and flavoured with cardamoms. Presently the tea-house began to fill with people, anxious to know what had happened to Nasrudin. Someone asked him, "Mulla, why do you buy things and sell them again regardless of price?"
"How dare you ask me questions?" roared the mullah. "I am a merchant. That is something, isn't it? And I might give you something one day."
Don't run away with the idea. Nasrudin was sedately riding his donkey along the road when it suddenly reared and he fell off. A group of small boys playing surrounded him and almost split their sides with laughter. When they had wiped the tears from their eyes, Nasrudin sat up and adjusted his turban with unruffled dignity.
"And what do you think you are laughing at?"
"Mullah," they said, chortling at the memory. "It was a wonderful sight. We were laughing at you falling off your donkey."
"You have not taken into consideration," said Nasrudin, "the possibility that I might have had a reason for falling."